Carl Jung. The pain you avoid becomes your prison. There is a room inside you that you have never entered. You know its door by the way you avoid it. You pass that hallway instinctively. Learn to laugh louder there. Check your phone. Organize your desk. Develop an expertise in anything that keeps your feet from stopping at that threshold. If you press your ear against the wood, you can hear a murmur your name spoken in a voice you pretend you don't recognize. You tell yourself it's nothing. But the strange thing about forbidden rooms is that they don't stop influencing the house just because you refuse the key. The hidden leaks, the chills, the flicker in the lamps, these are the signs that the room you won't enter is already entering you. Carl Jung spent a lifetime mapping the architecture of that interior. He said we live in a house with more levels than logic counts. A bright parlor where our manners sit. A kitchen humming with ordinary instincts. A cellar where the forgotten thickens into smell and symbol. A well that opens into water from before we were born. And he observed a law as unforgiving as gravity. The pain you avoid becomes your prison. Ignore a conflict, and it returns as fate. Repress a feeling, and it returns as symptom. Deny a part of yourself, and it returns as a person standing in front of you, wearing your refusal like a mask. To understand why avoiding pain binds us, begin with the persona, the mask you crafted to be allowed in. Every family, every schoolyard, every office teaches a weather. What gets sunshine? What gets frost? You learned quickly which moods invited company and which drove it away. You grew a face to be loved. That mask is not a lie. It is a tool. But when you forget it is a mask, when you confuse your accommodation with your identity, the rest of you goes somewhere. It doesn't vanish. It goes below. Jung named that below the shadow, the collection of traits, cravings, memories, and energies you could not afford to acknowledge. Some of it is dark for good reason: envy, cruelty, a wish to dominate. Some of it is beautiful, but forbidden creativity that embarrassed your family, tenderness that made you vulnerable, anger that would have protected you if anyone had allowed your boundaries to exist. The shadow is not only a bin for sins, it is a treasure chest guarded by a dragon made of shame. We excel at building tidy prisons. We call it maturity. We say we are over it. We keep busy. But the psyche is not a bureaucracy that closes a case when you mark it resolved. It is an ecosystem. What you exile grows wild. It finds a back door. It enters dreams as a stranger, sabotages dates with people who would be good for you, inspires sudden contempt for those who resemble your younger self, selects bosses who replay your childhood, compels you to explain your life as a story where you always almost arrive. The shadow recruits accomplices. It becomes a complex and autonomous knot of feeling, image, and memory that can seize the steering wheel of your behavior for minutes or months, speaking in your voice with a logic that feels absolute until it dissolves and leaves you wondering who just used your mouth. We like to believe we are masters of ourselves because we can choose salads and put inspirational quotes on our walls. But Jung walked into the dark and discovered that the self is a small island with deep roots and continents you cannot see. He did not map it from a safe distance. In 1913, as Europe drifted toward war, he began to dream of floods and blood, rivers carrying corpses, a sea of red washing over nations. He thought he was losing his mind. Instead, he was entering it. He broke with Freud, lost a father figure, and found himself at night painting visions in a crimson journal and conversing with figures who appeared from within and beyond his private story. He called it a confrontation with the unconscious. It launched his psychology and almost drowned him. It's tempting to treat this as esoteric, an artist's self-indulgence. But listen to the basic pattern. A man accustomed to reason discovers that under reason there are other intelligences, older languages, strange tutors who tell truths in images, because images can survive what explanations cannot. What happens when you will not listen? The psyche resorts to intensity. First it whispers, then it sings, and it burns. Anxiety spikes without cause. You get sick whenever you commit to something good. You find a new love and want to run. You get praise and your first impulse is to confess a flaw. You leave jobs before someone can leave you. You talk about your life as if you were a story written by a bored god, and the scenes never change. The pain you avoid develops strategies. It learns to wear costumes that fit your worldview so that you will unknowingly serve it. Jung offers a different bargain. He says your pain is not trying to ruin you. It is trying to meet you. The symptom is a symbol, not in the trite sense of something you can decode with a chart, but in the older sense of a thing that gathers meanings, a bridge between levels of your house. A panic attack is not only a malfunction. It is a messenger banging on the door like a storm. Depression is not simply the absence of joy. It is the shutting down of a project that has failed to honor your whole being. Addiction is not just a chemical leash. It is a ritual that replaces a missing initiation. He does not romanticize suffering. He says, if you do not give your pain a story, it will write one you don't like. Imagine your life as a valley with a river running through it. Avoidance is like building a dam out of furniture memes, schedules, opinions, hoping the water will honor your arrangement. It won't. It will rise until it spills over and carries your neatness away. Jung invites you to stop stacking chairs and instead to descend into the riverbed and move stones. This is not easy. The descent is muddy. The current is colder than you expect. Maybe you brought a flashlight. It flickers. Your companions are old myths and unexpected tears. But when you return, the river flows differently. Your valley changes shape. The staggering claim at the heart of Jung's work is that the psyche is self-regulating. Like a body that produces a fever to fight infection, the soul produces conflict to restore balance. The friction you feel is not only the world rubbing you raw. It is an inner intelligence asking for a different arrangement. If you refuse, the system intensifies the signal. If you listen, something shifts, not an instant cure, but a movement toward wholeness instead of mere survival. All of this sounds like poetry until you remember your own life, the conversation you have been avoiding, the grief you postponed so long it hardened into sarcasm, the anger you thought was uncivilized that might have saved you, the art you locked in a back room because praise felt like exposure, the memory you file under doesn't matter anymore, that still chooses your partners. You know the door. You even know where the key is. The question is whether you can stand the voice that waits behind it, and whether you'll realize that the voice you fear is your own before it speaks through other people and calls that fate. There is a particular cruelty in the way the avoided returns. It rarely knocks with its true name. It finds detours, disguises that fit your defenses like a hand fits a glove. Consider the helpful executive whose competence hides a ravine. After his father's death, he handled everything. The will, the speech, the guests, the paperwork. He never cried. Years later, he begins to explode at interns for minor mistakes. He tells himself he hates laziness, sloppiness. But when a younger man disagrees with him in public, his rage is so absolute that he frightens himself. He is not angry at the intern. He is punishing the ghost of a boy who was not allowed to be weak when his world ended. The rage guards a grief he's never permitted to exist. He has avoided the valley of tears and built himself a fortress on an unsteady cliff. The cliff is eroding. Each outburst is a rock falling. Or the caretaker, brilliant and generous, whose relationships always sour in the same flavor. She finds broken men and feeds them with a tenderness that would have healed her if anyone had offered it to her when she was small. She calls it love, they call it salvation, but their need devours her. When she finally leaves, she is bitter and convinced men are a species of famine. What she cannot yet speak, that her giving was partly a bargain with fate. If I keep you from drowning, I will not have to face my own ocean. The pain she avoids is the knowledge that her worth cannot be negotiated by sacrifice. The prison is constructed of thank you notes and private despair. Jung called these patterns complexes. Not a quirk in a personality test, but a living knot of images and feelings constellated around an archetype parent, hero, victim, judge, energized by past experiences and cultural myths. A complex is not simply an idea you hold. It is an idea that holds you. You know it is active when you suddenly become absolute. You can feel your face tighten, your breath shorten, the color draining or rushing. Later you say, I don't know what came over me. Something did. A cluster of meanings insisting on a script. Complexes are not enemies. They are ancient survival strategies whose timing is off. They will ruin your life if you let them drive without supervision. They will also guide you toward the room you avoid. Track the footprints of your worst repetitions, and they lead to a door. Avoidance recruits language to its side. We become eloquent. We tell precise stories about why nothing can change. We produce moral rationalizations, loyalty, duty, realism. We fixate on others' flaws, the safer flames to warm our hands over. We become professionals at projection, putting our shadow on other people, and then hating them for wearing it. The critic who calls everyone else arrogant, but secretly dreams of permission. The activist who condemns violence, but uses shame as a weapon. The spiritual seeker who preaches surrender and cannot endure uncertainty. When your disgust is absolute, when your hatred is pure, check the mirror. Your shadow may be standing behind you, waving. Avoidance has another ally, time. The longer you delay, the more elaborate the prison becomes. It grows rituals. The body learns the choreography of repetition so efficiently that your muscles can enact a betrayal without asking your mind to participate. That is why you text someone you promised never to see again, why your hand reaches for the bottle with a speed that surprises you, why your eyes go cold in the exact instant someone hits a scar you did not know remained. The longer pain is banished, the more it must shout to be heard. Jung cautions that the unconscious is not a garbage bin. It houses not only what you repress, but what humanity has always known. The archetypes, the lover, the warrior, the caregiver, the trickster, the sage patterns older than any family, recurring shapes our lives drape themselves over. These patterns are not prescriptions, they are potentials. When distorted by avoidance, they become caricatures. The lover becomes an addict of merging. The warrior becomes a bully afraid of tenderness. The caregiver becomes a martyr who drowns the rescued. The trickster becomes a liar to himself. The sage becomes a cynic, brilliant, and hollow. Recognizing the archetype moving through your crisis does not fix it, but it gives you a thread. It lets you say, I am not merely broken. I am in a pattern, and patterns can be walked consciously. In the Red Book, Jung writes dialogues with figures who torment and teach him. A wise old man with kingfisher wings, a snake that speaks in riddles, a patient who is also an image of his soul. Whether you take these as literal, symbolic, or artistic does not matter as much as the method. Instead of debating his pain, he meets it. He treats troubling images like emissaries, not intruders. He invites them to speak. He argues back. He asks what they want, what they protect, what they fear. This is not performance. It is craft, and it is dangerous if done without anchors. Jung had work, family, routines, and the grounding of a craft practiced in daylight. He kept a foot in the world, the other in depths. The point is not to live below. The point is to learn the language of the below so that it does not have to shout. Consider dreams, those nightly theaters where your shadow hires a director. Most of us treat dreams like leftover paint water. Jung treated them like dispatches from a frontier where your personal story meets the old stories. A dream of a flooded kitchen? Perhaps your carefully managed domestic life is being invaded by feeling. A dream of losing your teeth? Maybe a transition in power teeth, as instruments of grasping no longer fits the person you are becoming. A stranger at the door with a gift you're afraid to open? The avoided bearing something you need. Interpreting dreams is not solving riddles. It is building relationships with images so that your inner world can collaborate with you rather than punish you for not listening. But suspense intensifies before revelation. Avoidance does not kneel because you finally learned its name. It tests you. It demands humility. The task is not to conquer your shadow as if it were a city. The task is to negotiate a treaty with a sovereign who also happens to be you. You will feel ambushed by your own history at the exact moment you wish to be new. You will think you've healed and then discover a deeper layer. You will mistake a performance of healing posts, plans, slogans for the quiet, slow practice of changing habits you developed for survival. You will be tempted to spiritualize pain to avoid its human weight, or to medicalize everything and forget that meaning matters. You will seek gurus who promise shortcuts. You will find yourself praying to cure a symptom you need to understand. And in the middle of these failures, the door remains, as patient as stone. Of all his warnings, Jung's most unnerving is that the unlived life does not vanish. It turns people into problems. Your creativity, denied, becomes an envy that corrodes your friendships. Your sexuality, shamed, becomes a hunger you punish others for awakening. Your tenderness, mocked, becomes a contempt for anyone less armored than you. Your desire for wonder, neglected, becomes a credulity that falls for demagogues and miracles that smell like gasoline. The avoided returns as distortion. This is how private prisons become public ones. This is how families grow myths and nations grow monsters. The bill for what we refuse to feel is paid by those who cannot afford the interest. The question becomes unbearable in its simplicity. What is the one conversation you refuse to have? Write it on the door. And ask yourself how much longer you will sleep in a house whose foundation is a secret that knows your name. Here is the turn that offends our pride and saves our life. The symptom is not just a problem to be removed. It is a guide. The prison is also a map. The dragon that bars the treasure does not need slaying. It needs understanding, feeding, a role at the table. The pain you avoid carries information about what you are meant to become. Not destiny in a mystical sense, though there is mystery everywhere, but destiny in the practical sense, that your deepest conflicts reveal your shape. Jung called the long, patient work of becoming yourself individuation. Not individuality, eccentricities adorned like medals, but the slow alignment of outer and inner, persona and shadow, ambition and soul. Individuation is an alchemy, the transformation of raw ore into a metal that can bear weight. He borrowed the language of medieval alchemists who wrote in pictures to protect their experiments from mockery and theft. Negredo, the blackening, when all dissolves and you are lost. Albedo, the whitening, the washing of fragments and sudden clarity. Rubedo, the reddening, the return of life. Integration, the warmth of the heart that is seen and not fled. He was not playing at magic. He was giving you an imaginal grammar for processes your heart recognizes, even if your mind doesn't. How do you begin? Not with an extraction of pain by force, but with an invitation. Active imagination is one tool. You close your eyes, descend into the image that haunts you, and ask it to speak. You write down conversations with the critic who lives in your chest. You ask the panic what it is protecting. You draw the dream figure who frightens you, and give it a chair. You do this not to worship your feelings, but to learn their coordinates. You move from being a battlefield to being a host. A second tool is the craft of attention. You keep a dream journal, not to brag about spiritual adventures, but to track the weather of your inner landscape. You note the days when you launch into attack and the days you collapse into apology. You mark the triggers with curiosity instead of a gavel. You ask of any strong reaction, what complex seized me? Whose voice did I hear? How old did I suddenly become? Who am I punishing for a crime they did not commit? You develop a sense of humor about your own predictability. You fail less catastrophically because you see the storm forming before the lightning hits. A third tool is relationship. Jung warned against doing this in isolation. The psyche is a hall of mirrors. Alone, we mistake a projection for a person and a person for a projection. We need people who refuse to flatter us and do not delight in our collapse. Friends, partners, therapists, elders. Not saviors, witnesses. The goal is not to be told what to do. The goal is to be seen while you wrestle, so that you do not have to exile yourself to perform your becoming. When someone you trust says, "You did it again," this is not an indictment. It is a bell. Underneath these practices is a principle more radical than it first appears. Wholeness, not perfection. Perfection is a mask stitched so tightly to your skin you cannot breathe. Wholeness admits that you are a theater of opposites. Gentleness and ferocity, caution and risk, solitude and communion. The psyche is not interested in you choosing one and killing the other. The psyche wants a conversation between them that produces a third thing, a synthesis, a transcendent function, where a new way of living appears that honors both sides without mutilating either. You do not transcend by floating above. You transcend by holding the tension with courage until something arrives that you could not have imagined from either extreme. This is not mystical fog. It is how you tell the truth and keep your job. How you rest without quitting. How you love without dissolving. There is another pair you must befriend. Anima and animus, the inner feminine in a man, the inner masculine in a woman, and in all of us, the contrasexual principle that counterbalances the socialized persona. This is not about stereotypes. It is about energies your culture permitted or mocked. Your anima is your capacity to receive, to listen to currents that do not ask permission, to value relationship and mood as sources of knowledge. Your animus is your capacity to assert, to cut through confusion, to build structure and speak with spine. When split, you marry a caricature and demonize the other. When integrated, you do not abandon what you were taught was proper. You add what was exiled. Men who befriend their feeling do not become less strong. They become less brittle. Women who befriend their assertiveness do not become less loving. They become less available to be devoured. The inner wedding is less romance than reorganization. Your house gains a new staircase. And then there is meaning. Jung distinguishes between suffering without meaning, which crushes, and suffering in service of becoming, which can be born. Meaning does not remove pain. It aligns it. When you understand that your anxiety spikes around authority because your father disappeared and your mother became law, you stop calling yourself weak. You begin to practice with authority in small doses until your body learns that you are not a child. When you realize your depression returns every time you abandon your art for a role that wins applause, you stop calling yourself lazy and start building a life that includes the studio before the office. Meaning prevents you from stabbing yourself with the spear your wound handed you. The revelation deepens. The world collaborates with your inner work. Jung called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that constellate around a process of transformation. When you begin to allow your grief, songs about parting suddenly meet you in grocery aisles. You meet a stranger who tells a story that answers a question you didn't know you asked. A book falls open to a sentence that names your season. Skeptics roll their eyes. Let them. You do not have to assert metaphysical laws to honor the felt experience that when you orient toward your shadow with sincerity, the world becomes more articulate. Perhaps you become more attentive. Perhaps life is multi-layered. Perhaps both. As individuation proceeds, something previously called I loosens. You realize you are not the sole author of your life. You are a collaborator with a deeper center Jung named the self, the organizing totality of your psyche, the pattern that wants to unfold through you. It is not your ego's fantasies. It is your fate in the noblest sense. Not what happens to you, but what asks to be lived through you. The more you align with it, the less you need to control other people. You become more particular and more open. You say no with clarity and yes with ease. You prefer clean pain to dirty comfort. You laugh more because you recognize plots. You become strangely kind, not nice, not pliant, but kind in the sense that you don't enjoy humiliating anyone, least of all the versions of yourself you had to be to survive. All this sounds heroic. It is not. It is domestic. It looks like apologizing without self-erasure, like keeping a promise to your younger self about the kind of work you would do, like telling a partner, I am afraid, and I'm not going anywhere, like ending a friendship that thrives on gossip because you value your soul's hygiene, like taking a walk when you want to doom scroll, like pausing before you answer the text that would open the cell again, like building a small altar to the person you refuse to be and finally choosing them. The greatest shift is this. You stop organizing your life around avoidance. Once the room is entered, the house changes. You find windows you did not know opened. The light moves differently. The prison door does not vanish. It becomes a door you can choose to close when needed and open when ready. You learn that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is fear with a direction. There is a moment in almost every life where the script you've perfected fails to bring the audience to its feet. The applause that used to anesthetize you rings thin. The night echoes. You drive home through streets that feel too wide. The house is cold. You wonder if you have harmed yourself by doing everything right. Jung would say you have arrived at a bend in the river where maps drawn by other people go strange. You are not lost. You are demanded. The weight of that demand is not technical. It is personal. You are asked to give up the hope that someday someone will rescue you from the work only you can do. You are asked to forgive people who cannot make it with you because they love the version of you who accessorized their story. You are asked to release your parents from the throne of your days, not to forget what happened, not to deny what should have, but to stop worshiping the altar of if only. You are asked to grieve the ways you betrayed yourself to be safe. These are funerals with no audience. Bring flowers anyway. Pain becomes a teacher when you stop insisting it is a mistake. Grief becomes holy when you stop bargaining with it. There is a particular stillness in honest sorrow, like standing in a cathedral when no one is there, hearing the hum of a building shaped by vows. Your body knows ancient postures. Kneeling is not submission to cruelty. It is acknowledgement that you are small in front of what you love. The ego despises kneeling. It prefers firm floors and higher chairs. But to become a person and not a performance, you have to bow to seasons you cannot rebrand. Jung knew this in his bones. After his break with Freud, he entered solitude, built a tower by a lake with his hands, carved stones with symbols that pleased no one but the part of him that speaks in images. He cooked soup, received friends, returned to the village, paid his bills, went back to the tower. He practiced a rhythm of descent and return, a human tide. He did not move to a monastery. He made a monastery small enough to survive in the life he had. There is instruction in that. Do not flee the world to rescue your soul. Build a room within it where a different king rules. The family is where prisons become hereditary. The mother who cannot cry teaches her daughter to laugh at wounds. The father who never apologizes trains his son to perform competence can dissolve when alone. The silence around an uncle's violence becomes a holiday ritual, a dance choreographed by fear. Jung's psychology is not an excuse to indict your blood forever. It is an invitation to end a lineage of avoidance by refusing to pass it forward. You do not heal your ancestors by hating them out loud. You heal them by doing what they could not, by naming what was unspeakable and surviving the speaking, by choosing partners who do not reenact old wars and refusing to be entertained by injuries you once called love. There is another tenderness Jung keeps hidden under stern words. He believed that the soul has a destiny with beauty, not prettiness. Beauty in the old sense order that satisfies the heart because it aligns with what is true. He saw it in mandalas, circular images that appeared in his patient's drawings when chaos began to cohere. He saw it in dreams that offered a golden thing after years of darkness. He saw it in small acts, a man painting again, a woman planting a garden she will not live to see bloom, a child drawing a monster and laughing. The psyche rewards sincerity with pattern, not because you are good, but because you are honest. Love changes under this attention. It stops being a negotiation to avoid loneliness and becomes a practice of mutual individuation. You do not choose a partner to complete you. You choose someone who respects the fact that you cannot be completed. You fight not to win, but to reveal the shape of the third thing you are trying to. Build the relationship standing between you with its own needs and seasons. You keep mystery alive not by keeping secrets, but by allowing the other to remain other. You stop using each other as alibis for not meeting your own shadow. Nothing here is easy. Everything here is worth surviving. There is failure too necessary, sharp. The attempt to integrate the shadow can turn into a hobby of self-absorption. The courage to feel can become a justification for leaving a trail of wreckage in the name of authenticity. The discovery of archetypes can inflate you into a prophet of your own myth. The spiritual life can become another brand, synchronicity reduced to numerology, and the self confused with the influencer that lives in your phone. Jung would not scold. He would smile and ask what problem your new costume solves. And then he would point you back to the body, to the dream you do not understand, to the relationship you're avoiding, to the work that scares you because it does not guarantee applause. There is also mortality. Individuation is not a project with a triumphant finale. It is a conversation that ends when you do. Jung wrote in old age that the older he became, the more he felt surrounded by the dead, not morbidly, but companionably. He felt time differently, the way a river near the delta slows and spreads. He was not afraid of dying, so much as he was curious about the continuation of the story in another medium. Whether you share his curiosity or not, his stance suggests a way to live, with enough humility to let the day be big and enough humor to admit that you are small. Pain will arrive, so will laughter. The prison door will tempt you, so will the garden. And then there is the smallest, hardest mercy. Forgive yourself for having begun too late. It is a lie you have told yourself to keep the door closed. The room does not age the way calendars do. The boy you abandoned is waiting by a window. The woman you feared is lighting a candle. They do not need your perfection. They need your presence. You walk in, trembling, and say the sentence your life has waited to hear. I am here now. The air changes. It smells like rain on stone. Somewhere deep, a hinge turns. You have stood long enough outside the door to memorize the grain of the wood. The mind keeps making deals. Tomorrow, when the schedule is lighter, after the project. When the children are older, once you've fixed your sleep, when you've read the right book. You know, and I know, that this is how prisons keep their staff. The question is not whether the pain will wait. It will. The question is whether you will. Begin in secret and in daylight. Do one small thing that honors the room. Write for 10 minutes without editing a single word. Put a chair by a window and sit without your phone until you can hear what your body has to say. Speak aloud the sentence you have not said, even if the only ear is a page. Tell one truth to someone who has earned it. Ask your panic what it is protecting and thank it before you ask it to step aside. Set an alarm for the moment your habit usually hijacks you and change your choreography by an inch. Light a candle at the sink every time you wash dishes so that your suffering shares a table with flame. If the dream comes, write it down before coffee. Draw the strangest image, badly. Put it somewhere you will trip over it. Ask, who is missing in my life? A teacher? An honest friend? A therapist with enough skill to spot my theater and enough kindness to sit with the actor until he trusts the audience. Do not wait for courage to feel like confidence. Courage feels like nausea. Trust the body that shakes. It is shedding armor. It will not do this forever. Make a compact with yourself. You will stop calling sabotage fate. You will stop calling cruelty honesty. You will stop calling exhaustion normal. You will stop calling your unlived life a dream, as if it were a pet that can be fed with fantasies and never taken on a walk. You will risk looking sentimental to become sincere. You will risk disappointing people who prefer your mask to your face. You will risk being alone because you prefer solitude to company that requires self-betrayal. Bring your lineage to the table, not to prosecute them, but to tell them what you intend to do with their gifts and their damage. Say to the stern grandmother, I will keep your strength and let go of your silence. Say to the brittle father, I keep your discipline and refuse your contempt. Say to the mother who could not rest, I love your devotion, and I will not make my body your altar. Light a candle for each. Blow one out. Let smoke be the only argument. Build an altar to beauty you do not deserve, not as reward, but as orientation. A poem taped to a cupboard. A song at the same hour every day for a month. A bowl of water near a plant fulfilling the most ancient contract green things in exchange for breath. The soul is fed by order that does not oppress and by mystery that does not lie. When avoidance tightens your chest, go to the altar and remember that your life is not a spreadsheet. It is a conversation with something larger than your plans. Remember humor. The shadow hates to be laughed with. It wants to be laughed at or feared. Meet it with a grin and a handshake. Tell your complex you recognize its moves and appreciate its service. Then invite it to retire. Throw it a party if you must, with cake and an early bedtime. This is not trivializing. It is reducing the drama to a size that humans can hold. You are a human. Be one. And when despair whispers that you are late, that you have failed too publicly, that your prison is a permanent address, go outside at night and look for the scene where the sky folds into itself. Stars are not there for your comfort. They are there because the world is larger than your theory of it. But comfort will arrive anyway, disguised as perspective. Turn toward your house. Somewhere inside, a door waits. It has always waited. So has the person you become when you walk through. One more thing. The pain you avoid becomes your prison. The pain you face becomes a passage. Passages are not safe. They are honest. If you are waiting for safe, you will wait until your life finishes its sentence without you. If you are ready for honest, you have already begun. Take the key. Turn it. Enter the room. It is darker than you thought and kinder than you feared. On the table is a lamp. It is small. It is enough. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.